was an awesome video from our customer Telkomsat. Next up, the transporter erector, or TE, will retract away from Falcon. That's the large truss structure you see there standing next to the rocket. First, we'll see the clamp arms open up around the second stage, and then the TE will begin to pull away from the rocket slowly. At T0, ground hydraulic systems will pull the TE even further away from Falcon 9 as it lifts off. The first stage is connected to a launch mount at the base of the TE, but the structure is hinged and will retract from the vehicle in preparation for launch. You may also hear it referred to as a strong back from the launch team when you're listening to the nets. We use the TE to roll the rocket out to the pad and raise it to its vertical launch position.
Strong back lower has started.
We should have a view of the clamp arms opening up in a couple seconds from now. There you can see them opening up. The TE also routes the vehicle's fluids, power, and telemetry umbilicals from the ground systems to the rocket and payload until Falcon 9 goes on internal power and clears the pad. Also in the next few seconds, we should see the strong back begin to recline away from Falcon 9. At this point in the countdown, both the first and second stages are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of RP1 kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. Both first stage and second stage should finish propellant loading about a minute apart from each other. The first stage finishes up at around T-minus 3 minutes and a few seconds, and the second stage at T-minus 2 minutes. The white clouds you see around the vehicle are the chilled gas above the LOX tank that we vent overboard to maintain pressure inside of the tank as needed. When that water comes out into contact with the humid, moist Florida air, it condenses into that cloud that you're seeing.
Close out.
At T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 will be in startup, and that means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. And then, just inside of T-minus 2 seconds, we'll light the M1D engines for liftoff. Merah Putih 2 continues to be healthy, and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. The weather is still looking green, and the range is ready to support our T0 of 3:11 p.m. Eastern Time. And with that, we are proceeding into the last few minutes of terminal count.
Stage 2 LOX load, close out.
Good call out for second stage LOX load completion, and the white cloud that's venting is venting from the TE LOX line, and that is totally normal. In about 30 seconds, we
ground gas closeouts.
Be sure that F9 is in startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup. Go for launch.
We just heard from the launch director that all systems are go for launch of Falcon 9 with the Merah Putih 2 payload. Now let's sit back and watch.
T-minus 30 seconds. minus 15. T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and lift off. Go Falcon. Go Falcon set. Emergency compressions are normal. Vehicles pitching downrange.
At T plus 30 seconds and counting, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, carrying the Merah Putih 2 payload. During ascent, we tilt the engines, also known as gimbaling, and that turns the rocket horizontally in what we call a gravity turn. In a gravity turn, the vehicle is still going up, but now we're also heading horizontally away from the launch pad. Moments ago, we throttled the engines down in preparation for max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Max Q.
Just heard, we had max Q, and the rocket typically needs to go 17,500 miles per hour horizontally in order to avoid being pulled back down to Earth and get into orbit. So keep an eye on the stage 1 telemetry that's at the bottom of your screen. Now we have 3 events coming up in quick succession, starting with MECO, or main engine cutoff, stage separation, SES-1, or second engine start 1. And that's coming up in around 30 seconds from now.
Vehicles on a nominal trajectory. Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
And there you heard and even saw those 3 events that happened back to back, which were MECO, stage separation, and second engine start 1. Coming up next will be fairing separation. That's in about a minute from now.
Impact air pressures are nominal.
We have some really beautiful views from space. You can see the grid fins have deployed on the left-hand side of your screen on the first stage.
Fairing separation confirmed.
We just saw fairing separation, and we'll be attempting to retrieve these fairing halves again today once they fall back to Earth with our recovery vessel, Bob.
Both vehicles are on a nominal trajectory.
It's now T plus 4 minutes and 20 seconds into today's mission. Just past the T plus 6 minute mark, you should see on your screen the first stage entry burn. To start the entry burn, we'll relight 3 M1D engines, starting with the center engine, known as E9, followed shortly by the E1 and E5 engines. And it's similar to pumping the brakes to slow down the vehicle as it passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. we need to slow down to reduce re-entry forces, which then helps us recover and reuse the first stage. During the entry burn, Falcon 9 is decelerating by firing its Merlin engines, but we're still moving really fast, and this causes the vehicle to fly through Merlin's exhaust gases, which are also known as the plume, and this deposits a layer of soot on the vehicle surface. And that soot comes from the carbon-based fuel, the RP-1, that Falcon 9 burns, and with each flight, the soot builds up a little bit more on the outside of the vehicle. Oftentimes, prior to launch, you can see that soot on the first stage as it's sitting on the pad. We have a really awesome view of stage 2, and you can see on your screen it's still picking up speed, and as it heads to its destined orbit.
Both stages are on a nominal trajectory.
Entry burn on the first stage is coming up in a couple seconds.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
So on the left-hand side of your screen, we have stage 1. You could see that it really decelerated as its speed slowed down. Reusability is key to lowering the cost of spaceflight, which enables more investments in critical scientific research. The Falcon 9 first stage that's supporting today's mission will perform this entry burn for its 17th time, having previously supported missions like CRS-22 and 25, NASA Crew 3 and Crew 4, and Turksat 5B.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Stage 1 transonic.
The Merlins on the first stage are optimized for sea level and achieve 190,000 pounds of thrust each during ascent and entry. After liftoff, Falcon 9's first stage has more thrust than 5 747 airplanes at full power. The MVAC engine with a much wider nozzle is optimized to 220,500 pounds of thrust in vacuum.
Stage 1 landing burn startup.
And back shutdown. Nominal park orbit insertion.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
And there
Stage
you
1
have
landing
it.
confirmed.
That landing marks SpaceX's 275th recovery of an orbital-class rocket, including first-stage landings for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. We still have one more burn of our second-stage engine before we're ready to deploy Merah Putih 2 today. In a moment, we'll be going into coast, and we'll see you back here at the T+27 minute mark for the relight of our MVAC engine. But before we do, let's take a deeper dive on how Thales Alenia Space is growing the network.